The Bajoran wormhole had always been a mystery. The prophets who dwelt within it existed outside linear time, perceiving past, present, and future as a single, eternal moment. They had guided Bajor for millennia, intervened in moments of crisis, and protected their chosen people with powers that defied Federation science. But even gods make mistakes, and on Stardate 51721.3, in the depths of the Dominion War, the prophets made a mistake that would change everything. The USS Defiant shuddered as another volley of polaron beams hammered against its ablative armor. Captain Benjamin Sisko gripped the arms of his command chair, watching the tactical display light up with Jem'Hadar attack ships. 6 vessels had ambushed them near the wormhole. A calculated strike meant to cripple one of Starfleet's most advanced warships before reinforcements could arrive. Shields at 40%. Chief O'Brien reported from engineering, his Irish accent tight with stress. "Return fire," Sisko ordered. "Target their lead ship. Pattern Theta." The Defiant's pulse phaser cannons blazed to life, orange energy tearing through the void. One Jem'Hadar fighter exploded in a brilliant flash, but 3 more moved to flank, their formations precise and merciless. The Dominion didn't believe in warning shots or negotiations. They came to kill. "Captain, the wormhole is opening," Lieutenant Commander Dax announced from the science station, her trill spots furrowing in confusion. "But I'm not detecting any ships entering or exiting." Sisko's eyes narrowed. The Celestial Temple, as the Bajorans called it, was pulsing with energy, its swirling vortex of blue and white expanding far beyond normal parameters. Space itself seemed to twist, reality bending like fabric pulled too tight. "Prophets," he whispered. Then the wormhole screamed. It wasn't a sound exactly. It was a psychic pressure that hammered against every mind on the bridge. Betazoids across the station would later describe it as the feeling of something vast and incomprehensibly wrong being forced through a hole too small to contain it. The wormhole convulsed, and something dark erupted from its center. The sensors went insane. "What the hell is that?" Major Kira demanded from Tactical, her Bajoran faith doing nothing to prepare her for what appeared on the view screen. It looked like a man, tall, impossibly pale, dressed in a red coat and wide-brimmed hat that belonged to Earth's ancient history. But the way he moved, or rather, didn't move, was all wrong. He hung in the vacuum of space without a suit, without a ship, without life support, his long black hair drifting around a face split by a grin that was far too wide. And then he turned his head to look directly at the Defiant. Even through the view screen, even across thousands of kilometers of void, Sisko felt those eyes. Hidden behind orange-tinted glasses, but burning with something that made every instinct scream predator. The figure raised one hand in a lazy wave. "Sir, he's in open space," Dax breathed. "No environmental suit, no force field, no..." The Jem'Hadar made their decision faster than Starfleet could process. All 5 remaining attack ships pivoted and opened fire on the anomaly. Polaron beams, photon torpedoes, and concentrated disruptor fire converged on the figure floating before them. The explosions lit up the void like a newborn sun. When the light cleared, the figure was still there. His coat was smoking. His hat was gone, drifting away into space, but he was laughing. The Defiant's audio sensors picked up the sound, a deep, rich, utterly delighted laugh that should have been impossible in vacuum. "Oh, finally." A voice crackled across every comm frequency simultaneously, bypassing encryption as if it didn't exist. The accent was British, ancient British. Something interesting. The figure's form blurred. One moment he was a distant speck, the next he was on the hull of the nearest Jem'Hadar ship. The Yank, Sensors registered the impact. A single humanoid form hitting the vessel at impossible speed. And then registered something far worse. The screaming started. Jem'Hadar didn't scream. They were genetically engineered to feel no fear, to fight until death without hesitation. But through the comm static, the Defiant's crew heard them scream. "Get us closer," Sisko ordered. "I need to see what's happening." "Sir, I don't think—" O'Brien began. "Now, Chief." The Defiant accelerated, bringing the stricken Jem'Hadar ship into visual range. What they saw would haunt every member of the crew for the rest of their lives. The figure had torn through the hull with his bare hands. Through the breach, they could see him moving through the corridors like a red shadow, faster than the internal sensors could track. Jem'Hadar soldiers fired their Polaron rifles point blank. The energy beams passed through him as if he were smoke. And then he was solid again, hands closing around throats, teeth, oh God, teeth, tearing into necks. He's feeding on them, Kira whispered, her hand moving unconsciously to her Bajoran earring. The slaughter took less than 3 minutes. When the figure emerged from the ruined ship, his coat was drenched in purple Jem'Hadar blood. He was grinning, and in one hand, he casually held a Jem'Hadar soldier's severed head. He looked at it thoughtfully, then tossed it aside and turned his attention to the Defiant. This time, when he spoke, his voice was clear, amused, curious. "So, anyone want to tell me what year it is and why everyone's wearing pajamas in space? If you want to see more crossover battles and unexpected universe collisions, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and universe you'd want to see in the comments below. Let's explore the infinite together." Captain Benjamin Sisko stared at the view screen, at the blood-soaked figure floating in space, casually murdering his way through the Dominion shock troops. And for the first time since taking command of Deep Space Nine, he had absolutely no idea what to do. The remaining Jem'Hadar ships opened fire. The figure sighed, cracked his neck, and smiled. "Well," he said, pulling 2 massive handguns from inside his coat. "If you insist," the jackal roared. In the vacuum of space, there should have been no sound. But the Defiant's sensors registered the discharge anyway. A 13mm explosive round that tore through one Jem'Hadar fighter's shields as if they were tissue paper. The ship's hull buckled, atmosphere venting in a brilliant plume of frozen crystals. "Kinetic weapons?" O'Brien muttered, staring at his console in disbelief. "Who the hell uses bullets in space combat?" The figure, whatever he was, held a massive silver pistol in each hand. The weapons were absurdly oversized, designed for something far beyond human strength to wield. He fired again, and another Jem'Hadar ship's engine core ruptured in a chain reaction that painted the void orange and white. "Evasive maneuvers," Sisko ordered. "Get us out of his firing line." "Sir, he's not targeting us," Dax reported, her hands dancing across the science console. "He's only engaging the Jem'Hadar. And Captain, the energy readings I'm getting from him don't make any sense. He's registering as both alive and dead simultaneously. My scans show biological functions, but no heartbeat, no respiration, no..." The figure vanished. One moment he was floating in space between the Defiant and the remaining 3 Jem'Hadar ships. The next, he simply wasn't there. The sensors showed nothing. No transporter signature, no warp trail, no subspace distortion. "Where did he go?" Kira demanded. Her answer came in the form of screaming from the Jem'Hadar flagship. The figure had somehow teleported. No, that wasn't right. Teleportation left traces, directly into the ship's bridge. Through the Defiant's view screen, they could see the chaos through the flagship's transparent aluminum viewport. The Jem'Hadar first, a veteran warrior who had survived 100 battles, drew his Kartakan blade and lunged. The figure caught the blade with his bare hand. The metal sheared through his palm, splitting it clean in half. He didn't even blink. "Oh, that's cute." His voice crackled over the comm. "You brought a knife to a me fight." His hand regenerated before their eyes. Flesh knitting together in seconds, bone restructuring, skin sealing over muscle and tendon as if the wound had never existed. The Jem'Hadar first's eyes widened, the first and last sign of fear he would ever show. The figure's hand blurred. When it stopped, he was holding the first's still beating heart. "Huh," he said, examining the organ with academic curiosity. "Purple. Points for originality." He crushed it. "Sir, we need to do something," Kira insisted. "Whatever that thing is, it's slaughtering them." "They attacked him," Sisko said slowly. "And they attacked us first. He's a monster. He's fighting our enemy." Sisko's voice was cold, pragmatic, the voice of a man who had watched good people die in this war for too long. "Let them kill each other. We'll deal with the survivor." But the Jem'Hadar weren't going to survive. That much was becoming horrifyingly clear. The figure moved through the flagship like a force of nature. No, like something worse. Natural disasters didn't enjoy themselves. They didn't laugh while they tore soldiers apart. They didn't make jokes. "You know," his voice echoed across every frequency. "I once fought an entire Nazi vampire army on a moving aircraft carrier. This is honestly pretty underwhelming in comparison. I mean, you guys don't even have fun accents. What's with the whole generic movie alien thing you've got going? Did you lose a bet?" A Jem'Hadar soldier fired a Polaron rifle directly into the figure's face. His head snapped back, glasses flying off, and for one moment the bridge crew of the Defiant saw his eyes. They glowed. Crimson, inhuman, ancient. "Oh, I'm sorry," the figure said, his head rolling back to its normal position as the burn marks on his face healed instantly. "Did you want me to feel that? Let me try harder." He walked directly into the gunfire. Polaron beams tore through his chest, his arms, his legs. Holes opened and closed in his body like water accepting and releasing stones. And he just kept walking, grinning wider with every step. When he reached the soldier, he placed one hand gently on the Jem'Hadar's shoulder. "Boo." The soldier's terror lasted exactly as long as it took for the figure's other hand to punch clean through his ribcage. "Captain," Dax said quietly, "I'm reading massive energy buildup from the flagship. They're going to self-destruct." "Smart boys," the figure's voice said approvingly. "If you can't beat them, blow them up. I can respect that. Well, I could respect it if it would actually work." The Jem'Hadar flagship exploded. The detonation was massive, a deliberate overload of the antimatter containment system that released enough energy to vaporize anything within a 5-kilometer radius. The shockwave hammered into the Defiant's shields, dropping them to 15%. "Report," Sisko barked. "The flagship is gone, sir. O'Brien confirmed. Complete structural failure. Nothing could have survived that." "I'm reading debris and radiation," Dax added. "No life signs, wait." On the view screen, something moved in the heart of the explosion. A shadow, a shape, a figure in a red coat, floating peacefully through the radioactive hellfire as if it were a gentle summer breeze. He was missing his left arm. His entire left side was charred black, ribs visible through burned flesh. Half his face was a skull wrapped in smoking meat. And he was laughing. Oh, that tickled. He rotated in space, examining his injuries with the casual interest of someone inspecting a hangnail. Haven't lost an arm in, 30 years? 40? Time gets weird when you're functionally immortal. His arm regrew. Bone extended from the shoulder like a plant in accelerated growth. Muscle wrapped around it in crimson threads. Skin sealed over the top, pale and perfect. He flexed his new fingers experimentally. Good as new, you. Know what? I take it back. You guys are fun. Limited, but fun. The two remaining Jem'Hadar ships broke formation and ran. Their impulse engines flared to maximum, desperate to reach minimum safe distance for warp. The figure raised his pistols again. Now, he said cheerfully. Where are your manners? We were just getting to know each other. He fired. Both ships exploded simultaneously, their warp cores breached by impossible marksmanship. And then there was silence. The figure holstered his weapons. Where they went was unclear, as his coat didn't seem to have holsters, and turned to face the Defiant. He spread his arms in a gesture that could have been a shrug or an invitation. Well, he said, that was a nice warm-up. Now, would one of you adorable little future people like to explain what the fuck is going on? Because last I checked, I was in London dealing with a Catholic vampire crusade. And now, I'm in... He looked around at the stars, the wormhole, the debris field. I want to say space? Yeah, definitely space, which is new. Sisko took a slow breath. As captain of Deep Space Nine, he had dealt with omnipotent aliens, shape-shifting infiltrators, and prophets who existed outside time. He had negotiated with Klingons, faced down Cardassians, and stared into the face of the Dominion's genocidal expansion. But this was different. Dax, he said quietly, open a channel. Channel open, sir. Sisko stood, straightening his uniform. Whatever this thing was, it deserved a captain's attention. This is Captain Benjamin Sisko of the United Federation of Planets Starship Defiant. You're in Bajoran space, near Deep Space Nine. The year is 2374. The figure tilted his head. Then he started laughing again, a sound that shouldn't have been able to carry warmth and genuine amusement, while also making every primitive instinct scream danger. 2374? Oh, that's rich. And here I thought I'd seen everything. He sketched a mocking bow in the zero gravity. Alucard. No last name, no middle name, just Alucard. Vampire enthusiast of excessive violence, and apparently your newest illegal immigrant. He grinned, and his teeth were very, very sharp. So, Captain Sisko, got any blood bags on that fancy ship of yours? I'm starving. The conference room on Deep Space Nine had hosted many tense meetings, diplomatic negotiations with the Cardassians, strategic planning sessions with Klingon generals, heated debates about Federation policy with Starfleet admirals. But none of those meetings had involved a vampire sitting at the table with his boots propped up on the polished surface, casually cleaning blood from underneath his fingernails. Alucard had materialized on the Defiant's transporter pad 3 hours ago. Chief O'Brien still looked pale from the experience. The transporter had screamed warnings about unstable matter resolution and quantum phase variance before finally depositing something that looked human, but registered on sensors as a walking violation of thermodynamics. Now he sat across from Sisko, Major Kira, and Odo, looking utterly relaxed while the station's senior staff tried to process his existence. Let me see if I understand this correctly, Sisko said, his hands folded on the table in front of him. You're from Earth, 1940s London specifically. You're a vampire who worked for an organization called Hellsing, and you were pulled through dimensions by the prophets during what you describe as a really impressive Nazi vampire disaster. The really impressive part was the aircraft carrier, Alucard corrected, and the Zeppelin, and the psychotic Catholic priest with a magic bayonet. But yeah, that's the gist. He examined one particularly stubborn bloodstain on his glove. So, where's the nearest blood bank? I don't need much. Maybe 40, 50 liters to start? 50 liters? Dr. Bashir spoke up from the corner, where he'd been running medical scans that made less sense the longer he looked at them. That's more blood than exists in 7 average humanoids. Well, I'm not average, am I, Doc? Alucard smiled, showing entirely too many teeth. Though I appreciate your concern. Very professional. You've got good bedside manner for someone who smells like he's been genetically tampered with. Bashir froze. How did you... I can smell DNA modifications from across a room. It's a thing. Alucard waved dismissively. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. Mainly because I don't care. Odo leaned forward, his shapeshifter features settling into a stern expression. What I want to know is what you are. I've been a security chief for 8 years. I've dealt with every kind of threat imaginable. But you... He gestured at the scanner readings on the display. Your molecular structure keeps changing. You have no heartbeat, no respiration, but you're clearly animated. You exist in a state of quantum flux that should be impossible. Quantum flux? Alucard repeated, savoring the words. Is that what you're calling it? That's adorable. Back home, they just called it vampire bullshit. This isn't a joke, Kira snapped. You killed 63 Jem'Hadar soldiers in under 10 minutes. You regenerated from injuries that would vaporize any known species. And you're sitting here acting like this is funny. Alucard's smile faded slightly. When he looked at Kira, his eyes, still glowing faintly red, even in the conference room's lighting, held something ancient and tired. Major, I've been killing things for longer than your civilization has had warp drive. I've slaughtered armies. I've fought gods. I've died thousands of times and come back every single time because I'm very good at not staying dead. He leaned forward, boots hitting the floor with a heavy thud. So, yeah, I'm treating this like a joke. Because the alternative is treating it seriously, and trust me, you don't want to see me get serious. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Sisko held up a hand, cutting off whatever Kira was about to say. What do you want, Alucard? What do I want? Alucard leaned back again, considering. That's actually a really good question. I want to know where I am. I want to know how to get home. I want to understand why I'm in a universe where everyone dresses like they're extras in a low-budget sci-fi show and talks about warp drives and phasers. Like those are real things. They are real things, O'Brien muttered. See, that's fascinating to me. Because where I'm from, space travel was barely theoretical. We had jet engines and atomic bombs, not... He gestured vaguely at the window, where the stars of the Bajoran system glittered. Whatever the hell all this is. Dax spoke up from her console. According to our analysis of the wormhole's energy signature, your arrival wasn't random. The prophets, the entities that inhabit the celestial temple, actively pulled you here. They exist outside linear time, so they must have had a reason. The prophets, Alucard said flatly. Let me guess. Omnipotent space gods who think they know what's best for everyone? They've protected Bajor for millennia, Kira said defensively. Right. And how's that worked out for you? Because from what I've picked up from your station's computer, which has terrible security, by the way, your planet was enslaved by the Cardassians for 50 years. Where were your gods then? Kira's hand moved toward her phaser. Odo placed a restraining hand on her arm. The prophets work in ways we don't always understand, Sisko said carefully. He, of all people, knew the truth of that statement. He was their emissary, their chosen messenger. But if they brought you here, it was for a purpose. Or they fucked up. Alucard grinned. Even gods make mistakes, Captain. I've killed enough of them to know. The room went very quiet. You've killed gods, Odo said slowly. Well, a god. Singular. South American vampire deity who thought he was hot shit. Turned out he was very flammable. Alucard's expression turned distant, almost nostalgic. Good times. Lots of screaming. Bashir cleared his throat. Captain, if I may, his biological readings suggest he's telling the truth about his regenerative capabilities. The cellular structure I'm detecting isn't just healing. It's reforming from a non-corporeal state. He's essentially a consciousness that chooses to have a physical form. Like a changeling, Odo said. Like a changeling made of concentrated nightmares and British sarcasm, Alucard corrected. But sure, we'll go with that. Sisko stood, moving to the window. Outside, Deep Space Nine hung in orbit around Bajor, a symbol of Federation presence in a region being slowly consumed by war. Every day the casualty reports came in. Every day the Dominion pushed closer to Federation core worlds. Every day, good people died. And now the prophets had sent him a monster. What if I told you I could use your help? Sisko said quietly, not turning around. I'd ask what you're offering in return. Information, resources, a way to potentially get you home. Sisko turned to face the vampire. We're at war, Alucard. The Dominion, the Jem'Hadar you killed were part of their military, is trying to conquer the entire Alpha Quadrant. Billions of lives are at stake. And you want me to kill for you? Alucard's smile was sharp. How refreshingly honest. I want you to help us survive. By killing, if necessary. Alucard was quiet for a long moment, studying Sisko's face. Then he started laughing, not his usual mocking laugh, but something darker, edged with bitter amusement. Oh, Captain, you have no idea what you're asking for. You think you want a monster on your side? You think you can point me at your enemies and I'll just be a good little weapon? He stood, and suddenly the room felt smaller, darker. I don't take orders. I don't follow regulations. I kill what I want, when I want, how I want. And the only reason I haven't already torn this station apart looking for entertainment is because I'm curious about where the hell I ended up. Then be curious with us instead of against us, Sisko said evenly. I'm not asking you to join Starfleet. I'm not asking you to follow our rules. I'm asking you to consider that we might have aligned interests. Aligned interests. Alucard rolled the phrase around like he was tasting it. You want to survive. I want answers. You want the Dominion dead. I want... He paused. I want to see what this universe has to offer. Been a while since I fought something genuinely new. The Founders, the Dominion's leaders, are shapeshifters who believe themselves gods, Odo said quietly. They've genetically engineered species to serve them. They're attempting to impose order on the galaxy through conquest and genocide. Alucard's eyes gleamed. False gods and genetic manipulation? Oh, you're speaking my language now. So you'll help? Kira asked skeptically. I'll consider it, on one condition. Alucard looked directly at Sisko. I want to meet these prophets, the things that dragged me here. Because if they're gods, I want to see what they've got. And if they're not gods... His grin widened. Well, then we'll have a very different conversation. Sisko felt the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. The prophets had sent him Alucard for a reason. Of that, he was certain. Whether that reason aligned with the Federation's survival or something far more complex was unclear. But the war was killing thousands every day, and Alucard had destroyed 6 Jem'Hadar ships single-handedly. All right, Sisko said. but not yet. First, we establish some ground rules. You stay on the station. You don't kill anyone unless they're actively trying to kill you or others. And you submit to regular check-ins with security. Or, Alucard asked pleasantly, or I'll have Odo lock you in a holding cell with a level 10 force field, and we'll see how long you find that entertaining. Alucard laughed, genuinely laughed. Oh, I like you, Captain. You've got a spine. Most people meet me and immediately start begging or running. He stood, stretching like a cat. Fine, I'll play nice, for now. But I'm still going to need that blood. Synthahol won't cut it. We'll provide medical-grade blood substitutes, Bashir said quickly. You'll provide real blood, or I'll start getting creative about where I find it. Alucard headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. You've got a shapeshifter on your station. I can smell it. Not your security chief, the other one. Might want to deal with that. The door hissed shut behind him. Odo and Kira exchanged looks. There's another changeling on the station? Kira demanded. He could be lying, Odo said, but his voice was uncertain. Sisko returned to his seat, suddenly feeling very tired. Run a station-wide sweep. Level 1 diagnostic on all personnel. He looked at the empty chair where Alucard had been sitting. And somebody find out what he meant by killing gods. Outside the conference room, Alucard wandered through Deep Space Nine's corridors, hands in his coat pockets, taking in the sights of the 24th century with the interest of a tourist. Humans, Bajorans, Klingons, species he didn't recognize. All of them gave him a wide berth. Instincts screaming warnings their conscious minds couldn't quite articulate. He found himself in front of a bar. Quark's, according to the gaudy sign. Through the entrance, he could hear conversation, the clink of glasses, the sounds of sentient beings trying to forget they were in the middle of a war. Alucard smiled. Well, he said to no one in particular. When in Rome, Quark's bar was experiencing its usual evening rush when Alucard walked through the door. Dabo wheels spun, holographic displays flickered with sporting events from across the quadrant, and the air hummed with the controlled chaos of sentient beings spending latinum on fleeting pleasures. The Ferengi bartender, Quark himself naturally, was in the middle of negotiating the price of a Cardassian sunrise when every conversation in the bar suddenly stopped. Alucard stood in the entrance, red coat still stained with purple Jem'Hadar blood, looking around the establishment with obvious amusement. The temperature seemed to drop. Several patrons quietly reached for their weapons. Well, Alucard said, sauntering toward the bar. A space casino. I take back everything I said about the future being boring. Quark's lobes twitched nervously. He'd heard the rumors already. The entire station was buzzing about the thing that had slaughtered a Jem'Hadar squadron with its bare hands. He'd hoped it would stay in the security office or locked in a holding cell. He had not hoped it would become a customer. But business was business. Welcome to Quark's, he said, plastering on his most professional smile. Finest food, drink, and entertainment on Deep Space Nine. What can I get for you? Alucard slid onto a bar stool with unnatural grace and leaned forward, examining Quark with the interest of a biologist studying a new species. You're a Ferengi, right? Read about you in the station computer. Capitalists with ears like satellite dishes and a creepy obsession with profit. The Ferengi prefer to think of ourselves as entrepreneurs? Quark said stiffly. Sure you do. I'll have your strongest alcohol, something that would kill a normal human. All of our beverages are perfectly safe for humanoid consumption. I'm not humanoid. I'm a vampire who's been alive for roughly 500 years and can drink battery acid without flinching. So unless you want me to start sampling directly from your customers, Alucard glanced meaningfully at a table of Klingon freighter crews. Tostar, I suggest you find something with actual bite. Quark's hand was already reaching for a dusty bottle on the top shelf before his conscious mind caught up. Self-preservation was the 285th rule of acquisition for a reason. Aldebaran whiskey, 180 proof. It's illegal in 14 star systems. Perfect. Alucard watched as Quark poured a generous measure into a glass. He picked it up, sniffed it, and downed it in one swallow. Then he frowned. I can actually feel that one. Not much, but it's there. You wouldn't happen to have any fresh blood, would you? The bar went dead silent. We don't serve, that is. Quark stammered. Relax, tiny capitalist. I'm just messing with you. Alucard pushed the glass forward. Another, and keep them coming until I either pass out or get bored. Quark poured, calculating rapidly. If this creature wanted to drink, then by gints, shriveled lobes, Quark would sell him drinks. At triple markup. Maybe quadruple if he didn't notice. That'll be 5 strips of latinum. Alucard blinked. I don't have any. What did you call it? Latinum? Then I'm afraid I can't serve you. But you already poured it. And you already drank it. That's the 5 strips. The next one will cost you another 5. Alucard stared at the Ferengi. Then he started laughing. The kind of laugh that made everyone in the bar slowly reach for exits. Oh, you've got balls. I'll give you that. Most people meet me and immediately start begging for their lives. You're trying to charge me. I run a business establishment, Quark said, though his voice was decidedly higher pitched than normal. Everyone pays, even terrifying immortal killing machines. I like you. Alucard reached into his coat and pulled out a handful of old British pounds, paper money from World War II. This is all I've got. Think you can work with that? Quark examined the antique currency with his practiced eye. Worthless as latinum, but potentially valuable to collectors. Earth history from the mid-20th century, well preserved, probably authentic given the source. I'll give you store credit. 2 drinks. 10 drinks. 4. 8. And I don't tell everyone in here about that hidden camera in the 3rd Dabo table. Quark's eyes widened. How did you? Fine. 8 drinks. But after that, you're cut off unless you can acquire proper currency. Deal. Alucard raised his refilled glass in a toast. To capitalism, surviving the march of progress. As Alucard drank, the tension in the bar slowly eased. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. The Dabo wheel started spinning again. But everyone was acutely aware of the predator in their midst. At a corner table, a Vorta named Kevin watched the exchange with calculating interest. He'd been on Deep Space Nine for 3 days, posing as a civilian trader while gathering intelligence for the Dominion. His genetically engineered, mind-processed information with ruthless efficiency. Powerful, competent, unknown origin, hostile to Jem'Hadar, no apparent Federation loyalty. The Founders would want to know about this. Kevin activated his covert subspace transmitter, a device hidden in what appeared to be a Bajoran prayer bracelet. The message was brief, compressed, and encrypted with Dominion cipher protocols that Starfleet intelligence hadn't broken yet. Priority 1. Anomalous entity aboard DS9. Designation unknown. Capabilities include regeneration beyond known parameters, immunity to energy weapons, extreme close combat proficiency. Recommend immediate investigation and potential acquisition. He was about to add more when Alucard's head turned. Slowly, deliberately. His eyes found Kevin across the crowded bar with the precision of a targeting system, and he smiled. Kevin's genetically suppressed fear response spiked. That smile said very clearly, I know exactly what you are. Hey, Quark, Alucard called out, not breaking eye contact with the Vorta. You've got a spy in your bar. Purple skin, looks like a management consultant, sitting in the corner pretending to care about his Jabetian ale. The bar erupted into chaos. Kevin bolted for the exit, activating a personal transporter scrambler as he ran. Odo materialized from a support beam. He'd been surveilling the bar in liquid form, but the Vorta was already through the door. Alucard sighed, set down his drink, and vanished. One moment he was sitting at the bar. The next, he was gone. No transporter effect, no running, no apparent movement. Just instantaneous displacement. Odo shifted into his humanoid form and charged into the corridor, security teams converging from 3 directions. But when they reached the promenade, they found Kevin pressed against the bulkhead 3 meters off the ground, held by one hand around his throat. Alucard stood on thin air, defying gravity as casually as breathing. "So," Alucard said conversationally, "you want to tell me what you were transmitting? Or do I start removing fingers until you feel chatty?" "I have diplomatic immunity," Kevin gasped. "You have adorable optimism." Alucard's grip tightened. "Let me explain how this works. I'm not Starfleet. I'm not bound by your treaties or your laws or your precious Prime Directive. I'm a very old, very bored vampire who just caught a spy trying to report on me. So you're going to tell me everything, or I'm going to get creative." "Stand down," Odo shouted, phaser drawn. "Release him immediately." "Or what? You'll shoot me? We both know that won't work." Alucard didn't even look at the security chief. "Tell you what, I'll make this easy." He placed his free hand on Kevin's forehead. The Vorta's eyes went wide. Then they started bleeding. Not physically, something far worse. His mind was being torn open like a vault, memories extracted with all the delicacy of a sledgehammer. Alucard saw the Dominion fleet positions, changeling infiltrators in Federation space, upcoming military operations, the Vorta's orders to assess Deep Space Nine's defenses, and most importantly, a direct line of communication to a founder. Well, Alucard said softly. "Your bosses are very interested in me. They think I'm a weapon they can use." His smile turned predatory. How delightfully stupid of them. He released Kevin, who collapsed to the deck, gasping. Blood ran from his nose and ears, purely psychosomatic, but the trauma to his mind was real. "He's all yours, Constable," Alucard said, dropping to the deck with a heavy thud. "You'll find everything you need in his left boot. Subspace transmitter, Dominion cipher codes, a very detailed map of your defensive positions. Oh, and he's been sleeping with one of your Dabo girls to get access to the station's interior sensors. Might want to have a word with her about operational security?" Odo stared at him. "How did you..." "Telepathy. Reading minds is easy when you've got 500 years of practice and zero respect for privacy." Alucard turned to walk back to the bar. "I'm keeping his surface thoughts about the founders, by the way. Fascinating bunch. Shape-shifting fascists who think they're gods. I haven't been this excited to meet someone in decades." "You can't just..." Odo began. "Can I?" Alucard stopped, looking back over his shoulder. "Constable, I just handed you the biggest intelligence coup you've had in months. You know what the Dominion is planning for this sector. You know which civilians are changeling infiltrators. You know their cipher codes. You're welcome." He walked back into Quark's, leaving Odo standing in the corridor with an unconscious Vorta and a pile of evidence that would take Starfleet intelligence weeks to verify. Back in the bar, Alucard resumed his seat as if nothing had happened. Quark, with the survival instincts of a man who'd weathered Cardassian occupation, immediately poured another drink. "On the house," the Ferengi said quietly. "Smart man." Alucard raised the glass. "Two profitable business relationships. He drank, savoring the burn, and contemplated his situation. This universe was proving far more interesting than he'd expected. A war against fascist, shape-shifting gods. A station full of spies and soldiers and civilians, all playing their own games. A captain with the moral flexibility to consider using a monster. And somewhere out there in the wormhole, the entities that had dragged him across dimensions were watching. "Prophets," he said quietly, to himself or to them. "I don't know what you want. I don't know why you brought me here. But I promise you this. Before I leave, we're going to have a long conversation about consequences." The lights in the bar flickered. Just once. Just for a moment. Alucard grinned. "Yeah, that's what I thought." In his office, Captain Sisko received Odo's report with a mixture of relief and dread. Alucard had just prevented a major intelligence breach and identified Dominion assets on the station. But he'd done it through casual telepathic assault and threats of torture. "Sir," Odo said carefully, "we need to contain this situation before it escalates." Sisko looked out at the stars, at the wormhole pulsing with mysterious energy. The prophets had sent him a weapon. The question was whether that weapon would save them or destroy them. "Keep him under surveillance," Sisko ordered. "But don't antagonize him. And get me everything he pulled from that Vorta's mind." "Already working on it, sir." After Odo left, Sisko sat alone in the dark, contemplating the impossible choice the prophets had given him. Use the monster and risk becoming one, or refuse the monster and watch the Dominion win. Either way, the war had just gotten much more complicated. Deep Space Nine never truly slept. The station operated on a 26-hour cycle, but with species from across the quadrant passing through, there was always activity somewhere in its corridors. Still, at Odo 300 station time, the promenade was as quiet as it ever got. A few maintenance crews, an occasional insomniac, and the ever-present hum of life support systems. Alucard found the silence refreshing. He'd been exploring the station for hours, walking through its Cardassian-designed corridors with the curiosity of a predator in a new hunting ground. Everything fascinated him. Replicators that could create food from energy patterns. Holosuites that generated entire artificial realities. Computer terminals that accessed more information than existed in all of Earth's libraries in his time. The future, it turned out, was weird. He stood now at one of the promenade's viewports, staring out at Bajor. The planet was beautiful from orbit. Swirls of blue ocean, green continents, white, clouds catching the light of the system's sun. It reminded him of Earth, actually. Same basic composition, same fragile atmosphere, same populations of people who thought they were special because they could build cities and wage wars. Can't sleep either. Alucard turned. A Bajoran woman stood a few meters away, wearing the brown uniform of the station's militia, Major Kira Nerys. He'd read her file in the station computer, resistance fighter, former terrorist, current first officer. A woman who'd killed Cardassians with her bare hands during the occupation and still carried the rage of those years like a second skin. "Don't need sleep," Alucard said. "Technically don't need to breathe, eat, or follow the laws of physics. Being undead has its perks. Must be convenient. It has its moments." He gestured to the viewport. "Your planet?" "Yes. Pretty. Shame about the whole decades of brutal occupation thing." Kira's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about what happened here. I know occupation. I know genocide. I know what it's like when one group decides another group doesn't deserve to exist." Alucard's voice was surprisingly gentle. "I was in London during the Blitz. Watched the Nazis try to bomb Britain into submission. watched them round up Jews, Roma, disabled people, anyone they considered inferior, and ship them off to camps. So yeah, Major, I know a little about occupation. Kira studied him with new eyes. The Blitz. That was, what, 600 years ago? In your calendar? About that. Feels like yesterday to me. He smiled without humor. Time gets strange when you're immortal. Yesterday and 4 centuries ago start to blend together. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 warriors from different eras looking at the same planet. Why are you really here? Kira asked finally. And don't give me that line about being pulled through dimensions by accident. The prophets don't make mistakes. Your gods pulled me here. I didn't ask for it. Alucard turned to face her fully. But since you asked, I don't know. Maybe they needed a monster. Maybe they saw your war and decided you needed something that could fight back without worrying about treaties or morality or the Prime Directive. We don't need a monster. We need allies. You have allies. The Federation, the Klingons, even the Romulans are technically on your side now. And you're still losing. Alucard's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. The Dominion has you outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outpositioned. They're winning because they're willing to do things your precious Federation won't. Genocide, biowarfare, genetic manipulation, all the fun war crimes. And you think the answer is to become like them? I think the answer is to win. Everything else is philosophy. He paused. But I'm not here to lecture you about morality. I gave up on that when I realized I was literally a creature of evil who happened to fight on the side of humans. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting. Despite herself, Kira almost smiled. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Brooding vampire, lots of angst? Maybe some romantic nonsense about eternal love? Something like that. Please, I'm 500 years old. You know what you learned in 5 centuries? That everything is ridiculous. Nothing matters except what you decide matters. And the only thing worse than being a monster is being a boring monster. He started walking down the promenade, hands in his coat pockets. Come on, if you're going to interrogate me, at least do it somewhere more interesting. Kira fell into step beside him, one hand on her phaser. Where are we going? Wherever. I'm exploring. You're following because you don't trust me alone on the station. We'll call it a patrol. They walked in silence past darkened shops and closed restaurants. Garrick's Clothiers, Replimet, the Bajoran Temple. Each storefront represented someone trying to build a life in the shadow of war. The captain thinks you're dangerous, Kira said. The captain is correct. But he's considering using you anyway. The captain is desperate. Desperate people make interesting choices. Alucard stopped in front of the temple entrance. This is where your people pray to the prophets, right? Yes. Mind if I go in? Kira hesitated. The temple was sacred space, and Alucard was, well. But the prophets had brought him here. If anyone had the right to enter, maybe it was him. Be respectful, she said. I'll try my best. The temple was small, intimate. A circular room with benches arranged around a central altar. Orbs glowed softly in recesses along the walls, artifacts that supposedly allowed communication with the prophets. The air smelled of incense and old prayer. Alucard walked to the altar and stared up at the ceiling, where Bajoran symbols spiraled in intricate patterns. So, he said conversationally, you're the ones who dragged me here, the prophets, the wormhole, aliens, the timeless beings who see past, present, and future as one eternal now. He spread his arms. Well, want to explain yourselves? Because from where I'm standing, kidnapping people across dimensions is kind of a dick move. The lights flickered. Kira stepped back instinctively. You shouldn't. The air split. Reality peeled open like a wound, and suddenly they weren't in the temple anymore. They were everywhere. Nowhere. In a space that existed outside normal causality, where time moved in all directions simultaneously. And in that space, the prophets waited. They appeared as humanoid shapes made of light and energy. But Alucard could sense what they really were. Consciousness without form, beings who experienced reality in ways linear creatures couldn't comprehend. They spoke, but not with words. Concepts flowed directly into his mind. The Sisko's companion. Why do you resist understanding? Because I don't appreciate being yanked across dimensions without my consent, Alucard said. In this space, his voice was clear, solid, an anchor of linear existence in a realm without sequence. And because I've met enough higher beings to know that just because you're powerful doesn't mean you're right. You exist as both dead and living, past and present together. You confuse our perception. Yeah, well, vampirism is complicated. Get to the point. Why am I here? The Dominion threatens linear existence. The Founders would impose their order. This cannot be permitted. So you pulled me here to fight them. I'm a weapon? You are. Chaos. Unbound by time. Unfettered by mortality. The Founders cannot predict you. The future becomes uncertain. Alucard laughed. A sound that shouldn't have been possible in this timeless space, but existed anyway because he refused to let physics tell him what to do. You don't know what I'm going to do. You exist outside time. You can see every possible future, but you can't see me, because I'm from outside your universe, entirely. He stepped closer to the nearest prophet shape, and even these ancient beings seemed to flinch. You gambled. You pulled something random and dangerous into your reality because the alternative was predictable Dominion victory. That's hilarious and terrifying, and exactly the kind of desperate move I'd make. Will you aid the Sisko? Will you preserve linear existence? I'll think about it. But first, you're going to answer my questions. Alucard's eyes burned crimson. Can you send me home? The prophets were silent for a long moment. When they answered, it was with something almost like regret. The barrier between universes has sealed. You exist here now. Return is improbable. Improbable, not impossible. When the threat concludes, when order is restored, then, perhaps, the path may open. So I help you win your war, and maybe you'll send me home. Alucard considered this. And if I refuse, you will exist, here, always, with no purpose, no opponents worthy of your nature. Eternal boredom in linear time. That hit harder than any threat could have. Alucard had spent decades bored in his own universe, waiting for enemies strong enough to make fighting interesting. Here, stranded in a future where everyone dressed like they were in a play and fought wars with rules and regulations. The prophets knew exactly how to motivate him. Fine, he said. I'll play your game. I'll fight your Founders. I'll be your chaos element. But understand this. I don't serve you. I'm not your weapon. I'm a tourist with nothing better to do who happens to find your war interesting. The moment I get bored, all bets are off. This is acceptable. We do not require servitude, only action. Then we have a deal. Alucard turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. You said you can see all possible futures. So tell me, in how many of them do I actually help you win? The prophet's silence was deafening. Yeah, Alucard said quietly. That's what I thought. Reality snapped back like a rubber band. Suddenly, he was in the temple again, Kira staring at him with wide eyes. What just happened? She demanded. You were glowing and the entire temple was shaking and... I had a chat with your gods." Alucard walked toward the exit. "Turns out they're just as manipulative as every other divine being I've ever met. They want me to fight the Dominion because they can't predict what I'll do, which means the future is uncertain, which means the Founders can't win through pure strategic superiority." Did they tell you anything about how to win? Nope, they don't know. That's the whole point. He stopped at the door. "But they did tell me I'm stuck here until the war's over. So I guess I've got nothing better to do than make things interesting." Kira followed him back into the promenade. "And you're going to help us?" "I'm going to fight the Founders. Whether that helps you depends on how you define help." He glanced back at her. "The Prophets chose chaos, Major. Chaos doesn't take sides. It just happens. And the Dominion is about to learn what that means. Somewhere in the depths of Dominion space, in a facility where the Founders gathered to plan their conquest, a changeling received the intelligence report from Deep Space Nine. It read the analysis of Alucard's capabilities. It reviewed the tactical assessment. And for the first time in recorded history, a Founder felt something that might have been concern." "What is it?" another Founder asked. "An unknown variable on Deep Space Nine. The Vorta's report suggests capabilities beyond any known species." "Should we be concerned?" The first Founder shifted its liquid form, reforming into something that might have been thoughtful. "We should be prepared. This entity represents disorder, unpredictability, everything we have worked to eliminate. Then we eliminate it. Perhaps. Or perhaps we study it. Learn from it. Turn it to our purposes." The two Founders considered this. In their perfect galaxy, there would be no chaos, no uncertainty, only order. But first, they would need to understand what chaos looked like when it had a name and walked among the solids. They would send their best, their most capable, their most ruthless. And Alucard, somewhere on Deep Space Nine, smiled in his sleep, if what he did could be called sleep, because he could feel the attention of gods and monsters turning his way. Finally, something interesting was about to happen. The security briefing started at 800 hours sharp. Captain Sisko sat at the head of the conference table, flanked by his senior staff. The intelligence Alucard had ripped from the Vorta's mind had been analyzed, verified, and disseminated to Starfleet Command. The results were both encouraging and deeply disturbing. 3 changeling infiltrators, Odo said, calling up holographic displays of station personnel. 2 in maintenance, 1 in civilian administration. We've already detained them. They're in holding cells with anti-shapeshifter protocols active. How did we miss them? O'Brien asked. We didn't. They passed every blood screening, every sensor sweep, every security protocol we have. Odo's expression was grim. The Founders have adapted. These infiltrators use a modified cellular structure that reads as solid on our equipment. But Alucard detected them instantly, Kira said. He smells them, Bashir added, still reviewing the medical scans he'd managed to take. His predatory senses operate on a level our technology can't replicate. He can detect the molecular instability inherent in shape-shifting biology. Sisko leaned back in his chair, which makes him the most effective changeling detector we have. Starfleet intelligence wants him. Absolutely not, Odo said immediately. Sir, with respect, we can't hand over a potential asset to intelligence. They'll dissect him, try to weaponize him, and probably get half their facility killed in the process. I wasn't planning to hand him over. I'm planning to use him here. Sisko pulled up a tactical display of the Bajoran sector. The Dominion knows we have him now. Keevan's transmission got through before Alucard intercepted it, which means they'll either send assassins to eliminate him or diplomats to recruit him. Let them try, Kira muttered. The concern isn't whether they can kill him. They probably can't. The concern is whether he'll accept their offer. Sisko looked around the table. What do we actually know about his loyalties? Silence. Exactly. He fought the Jem'Hadar because they attacked him. He exposed the Vorta because it amused him. He spoke to the prophets because he was curious. But we have no indication he actually cares about the Federation, Bajor, or this war. He said the prophets can send him home after the war ends. Kira offered. That gives him motivation to see the Dominion defeated. Assuming he believed them. Assuming he cares about going home. Sisko stood, moving to the window. We need to understand what drives him, what he wants, what he fears, if anything. I may have some insight on that, a new voice said. Everyone turned. Garrick stood in the doorway, looking impeccable as always in one of his tailored suits. The Cardassian tailor and former Obsidian Order operative smiled pleasantly. Forgive the intrusion, but I happened to overhear your discussion while passing by. This is a secure briefing, Garrick, Odo said flatly. Is it? My apologies. The door was open. Garrick moved into the room uninvited, hands clasped behind his back. I've been observing our new arrival with considerable interest. He visited my shop yesterday. He did? Sisko asked. Indeed. Wanted to know if I could repair his coat? Fascinating garment, actually. The fabric is unlike anything I've encountered. Leather of some kind, but remarkably durable. The bloodstains proved quite stubborn. Garrick's eyes gleamed. We had a very illuminating conversation. About what? Kira demanded. Philosophy, mostly. The nature of monsters. The difference between killing because you must and killing because you enjoy it. Garrick sat down without being invited. He asked me if I'd ever tortured anyone. When I confirmed that yes, during my time with the Order, I had employed such methods, he seemed pleased. Said it was refreshing to meet someone honest about their capacity for violence. The room had gone very quiet. He's testing us, Sisko realized, trying to understand who we are, what we're capable of. Precisely, Captain, and I suspect he's rather disappointed by what he's found. Garrick leaned forward. The Federation presents itself as enlightened, evolved beyond petty barbarism. But you're fighting a war. You've allied with the Klingons, warriors who sing songs about glorious battle. You work with Section 31, your own shadow organization that operates outside your precious laws. You've deployed biogenic weapons, poisoned planets, and committed acts that would horrify the Federation Council. Your point? Sisko's voice was dangerously quiet. My point is that Alucard recognizes hypocrisy when he sees it. Your monster's pretending to be heroes. He's a monster who's honest about what he is. Garrick smiled. He respects the latter far more than the former. So, what do you suggest? O'Brien asked. Stop trying to manage him. Stop trying to contain him. Stop pretending you can control what he is. Garrick stood. Embrace the fact that you have a weapon of mass destruction wearing a red coat and drinking at Quark's bar. Point him at your enemies and let him do what he does best. And when he turns on us? Kira asked. Then you'll discover whether your principles are worth dying for. Garrick moved toward the door. If you'll excuse me, I have a shop to run and a coat to repair. He's paying in antique Earth currency, by the way. Pounds sterling from 1944. Absolutely fascinating specimens. After he left, the senior staff exchanged uneasy glances. I hate it when he makes sense, O'Brien muttered. Sisko returned to his seat, the weight of command pressing down on his shoulders. Every decision in war involved compromise. Every victory required sacrifice. But using Alucard wasn't just compromising with necessity. It was making a deal with something that existed outside the normal rules of morality. We proceed carefully, he decided. Keep him engaged, keep him interested. But don't pretend we can control him. Garrick's right about that much. Alucard will see through any attempt at manipulation. What about the Dominion? Dax asked. They'll send someone, soon. Then we'll be ready, and we'll see exactly where Alucard's interests actually lie. The Dominion's response arrived 3 days later. She materialized in Quark's bar at exactly 1600 hours, using a personal transporter that bypassed the station's security protocols. One moment, the table was empty. The next, a Vorta sat there, perfectly composed, smiling with genetically programmed serenity. Alucard looked up from his drink, his 7th Aldebaran whiskey of the hour, and raised an eyebrow. Well, that's new. Usually people use doors. I am Eris, the Vorta said, her voice smooth and professional. I represent the Dominion. I've come to speak with you about an opportunity. An opportunity to get torn apart by an ancient vampire? Because that's generally what happens to people who interrupt my drinking. Despite his words, Alucard seemed amused. But I'm listening. You've got 30 seconds before I get bored. Eris folded her hands on the table. Around them, the bar had gone silent. Quark was already reaching for the emergency comm. Odo was materializing from a support pillar. Security teams were converging. The Founders have observed your capabilities, Eris said, ignoring the commotion. You are unique, a being who exists outside normal parameters. The Founders believe you would make an excellent addition to the Dominion. Do they now? They can offer you purpose, resources, access to the entire Gamma Quadrant. Whatever you desire, the Dominion can provide. Whatever I desire, Alucard repeated, swirling his drink. That's ambitious. What if I desire to kill your Founders and wear their skin as a coat? Eris didn't even flinch. The Founders are gods. They cannot be killed. Everything can be killed. Gods especially. I've done it before. He leaned forward, eyes glowing behind his glasses. But I'm curious. Why would your shape-shifting fascists want to recruit me? I'm chaos, disorder, everything you're trying to eliminate. You're powerful. Power serves order when properly directed. And you think you can direct me? We think we can offer you something the Federation cannot. Honesty. Eris's smile was sharp. The Federation will use you while pretending they're better than you. They'll point you at their enemies and then condemn you for doing what they asked. The Dominion makes no such pretense. We know what you are. We accept it. We celebrate it. Alucard went very still. In the silence, Odo moved closer, phaser drawn. You're in violation of Deep Space Nine security protocols. Come with me quietly or what, shapeshifter? Alucard didn't look away from Eris. You'll shoot her? Arrest her? She's got diplomatic immunity, doesn't she? Or did the Dominion not bother with the paperwork this time? The Dominion recognizes no authority but the Founders, Eris said. But I'm happy to leave peacefully after you hear my complete offer. I'm listening. Join us. Fight for the Dominion. Help us bring order to the Alpha Quadrant. In exchange, we'll provide you with enemies. Real enemies. The Breen, the Borg. Species 8472 from fluidic space. Threats so dangerous that even your Federation has nightmares about them. Eris leaned forward. We can give you what you truly want, Alucard. Entertainment, challenge, purpose in a universe that's forgotten how to make things interesting. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Alucard laughed. It started as a chuckle, built to genuine amusement, and finally exploded into full-throated laughter that made glasses rattle on the bar. "Oh, that's good," he gasped between laughs. "That's actually really good. You almost had me." The whole "we accept what you are" speech, the promise of worthy enemies, even the dig at Federation hypocrisy. Solid recruitment pitch, 8 out of 10 would recommend. Eris's smile faltered slightly. "You're refusing?" "I'm refusing because you made one critical mistake." Alucard's laughter died, replaced by something colder. "You assumed I want to serve anyone. Federation, Dominion, doesn't matter. I spent 400 years taking orders from humans who thought they could control me because I wore a leash. Never again." He stood, and the temperature in the bar dropped. "But here's what I will do. I'll fight whoever I want, whenever I want, for whatever reason amuses me at the time. Sometimes that might help the Federation. Sometimes it might hurt them. Sometimes I might decide to tear apart a Dominion fleet just to see what color Jem'Hadar blood looks like in a nebula." His smile was all teeth. "The beauty of being a monster, my dear Vorta, is that I don't need permission to be monstrous. The Founders won't accept it. The Founders can accept whatever I decide they'll accept. Or they can try to stop me. Personally, I'm hoping for option 2. I haven't killed a god in decades." Eris stood slowly, her genetically programmed composure finally cracking. "You're making a mistake. Probably. But it's my mistake to make." Alucard gestured to the door. "Now get off this station before I decide that 'shoot the messenger' is more than just an expression." Eris activated her personal transporter. In the moment before she vanished, she said, "The Founders will remember this. Looking forward to it." She disappeared in a shimmer of energy. The bar erupted into relieved conversation. Odo holstered his phaser, looking between Alucard and the empty space where Eris had been. "You just rejected the Dominion," he said slowly. "Sure did. They'll send everything they have to kill you?" "I certainly hope so." Alucard sat back down and drained his glass. "Quark, another round. And keep them coming. I'm celebrating." "Celebrating what?" Quark asked nervously. "The fact that this universe just got a lot more interesting." In his office, Sisko received the security report with something that might have been relief. Alucard had chosen chaos over order, independence over servitude. It wasn't loyalty to the Federation, but it was something. And in a war where allies were scarce and enemies were everywhere, something was better than nothing. The war for the Alpha Quadrant had just gained its most unpredictable variable. Worf, son of Moog, had faced many challenges in his life. He had fought Romulans, Cardassians, and Borg. He had survived dishonor, exile, and the loss of his mate. He had stood on the bridge of the Enterprise during battles that would have broken lesser warriors. But nothing in his considerable experience had prepared him for the vampire who had just called him a cosplaying furry with anger management issues. The confrontation had been building for days. Alucard had been wandering the station like a tourist in hell, making observations that ranged from insightful to deliberately provocative. He told Chief O'Brien that his engineering solutions were charmingly primitive. He'd informed Dr. Bashir that genetic engineering was cheating at being human. He'd spent an hour in ops watching the crew work before declaring that everyone would be more efficient if they stopped trying to solve problems with committee meetings. But it was his commentary on Klingon culture that finally pushed Worf past his considerable patience. "Honor," Alucard had said loudly in the replimat, addressing no one in particular while Worf ate his gog 3 tables away. "The Klingons are obsessed with honor. Die with honor, fight with honor, probably shit with honor. But you know what actual warriors call honor? Marketing. It's a brand, a way to make killing sound noble instead of messy and traumatic and deeply fucked up. Worf had set down his fork with deliberate calm. "You know nothing of Klingon honor," he said, his voice carrying across the dining area. "I know it's a convenient excuse to start fights," Alucard replied cheerfully. "I know it's a way to justify violence while pretending you're better than the people you're killing. I know it's performance art with blood. You dare. I dare a lot of things. It's kind of my whole deal." Alucard turned to face him fully. "But if you're offended, we can settle this the old-fashioned way. You, me, one of those holosuites I keep hearing about. We'll see if your honor holds up when you're fighting something that doesn't die." Which was how they ended up in Holosuite 3, with half the station's crew watching via security feeds. Quark was taking bets. The holosuite was programmed to resemble a traditional Klingon combat arena, a circular platform surrounded by weapon racks, lit by burning torches, with simulated warriors chanting in the background. Worf stood at one end in full Klingon battle armor, batleth in hand. Alucard stood at the other end in his blood-stained red coat, hands in his pockets, looking bored. "The rules are simple." Odo's voice crackled over the comm. He'd insisted on officiating to prevent actual murder. First combatant to yield or become incapacitated loses. Lethal force is permitted. He said the last part with obvious reluctance. "No rules," Alucard corrected. "That's boring. Let's make this interesting. If I win, you have to admit that honor is just cosplay with consequences. If you win," he paused. "Actually, if you win, I'll be genuinely impressed. So there's that." Worf's grip on his batleth tightened. "You mock everything. You respect nothing. You are without honor, without discipline, without purpose. You are everything a warrior should not be. And yet, I'm still standing after 500 years of people trying to kill me. Funny how that works." Alucard finally pulled his hands from his pockets. "Come on, Worf. Show me what Klingon honor looks like when it's getting its ass kicked by a British vampire." Worf roared, a proper Klingon battle cry, and charged. He was fast, faster than his size suggested. The batleth whistled through the air in a perfect arc designed to decapitate. It was a strike that had killed dozens of enemies across his career. Alucard caught the blade between his hands. The batleth's edge bit into his palms, drawing blood. Alucard looked down at the wound, then up at Worf, and smiled. "Points for enthusiasm. But you're going to need to try harder than that." He twisted. The batleth shattered like glass. Worf stared at the broken weapon in shock. Batleths were forged from baconite, one of the hardest metals in known space. They didn't break. "Physics doesn't really apply to me," Alucard explained helpfully. "I exist in a state of permanent violation of natural law. It's very liberating." Worf dropped the ruined weapon and drew his Diktog knife in one smooth motion, lunging forward with the desperate precision of a warrior who knew he was outmatched but refused to surrender. The blade found Alucard's throat, punched clean through, and emerged from the back of his neck. Alucard didn't even blink. "Better," he said around the knife in his windpipe. "You've got good instincts. Throat strike, spinal severance should have killed me instantly." The flesh around the blade began to smoke. "Unfortunately for you, I've been decapitated 14 times, and it hasn't stuck yet." He pulled the knife out, himself, blood running down his coat. The wound sealed within seconds. Worf backed away, reaching for another weapon. But Alucard moved, really moved, and suddenly he was behind the Klingon, one hand on his shoulder. "Your turn," Alucard said. He threw Worf across the holosuite. The Klingon hit the far wall hard enough to crack the holographic stone, crashed through a weapon rack, and rolled to his feet bleeding from a dozen cuts. His armor was dented. His pride was worse. "Yield," Odo commanded over the comm. "I will not yield to a creature without honor." Worf grabbed a pike from the ruins of the weapon rack and charged again. This time, Alucard didn't dodge. He let the pike punch through his chest, straight through where his heart should have been. He looked down at the weapon impaling him like it was a minor inconvenience. "You know what your problem is?" Alucard asked conversationally, blood dripping from his mouth. "You think fighting is about honor, about glory, about dying. Well..." He grabbed the pike and pulled himself further onto it, moving closer to Worf until they were face to face. "But fighting is about winning. Everything else is just poetry you tell yourself to sleep at night." He headbutted Worf. The Klingon staggered back, and Alucard pulled the pike free, tossing it aside. The hole in his chest closed like a time-lapse video of healing. "I've fought in wars where honor didn't exist," Alucard continued, walking slowly toward Worf. "Wars where children were bombs and civilians were shields. Wars where the only rule was don't die. And you know what I learned? Honor is a luxury. It's something warriors invent when they're not desperate enough." Worf spit blood. "You understand nothing. I understand that you're fighting a war against an enemy that doesn't care about your honor. The Founders breed soldiers in vats and throw them at you until you run out of ships. The Jem'Hadar die without hesitation because they're genetically programmed to obey. And you're trying to fight them with rules." Alucard stopped a meter away. "How's that working out for you? We will prevail. We fight for something greater than ourselves. Do you? Or are you just telling yourself that because the alternative is admitting you're killing and dying in a war where nobody's actually the good guy?" Worf's eyes widened, then narrowed. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "You're trying to make me angry," he said. "To make me fight without discipline. But I see what you are now. You're not a monster. You're just alone." Alucard's expression froze. "You mock honor because you have none. You mock purpose because you have none. You mock everything because you believe in nothing." Worf straightened despite his injuries. "You're 500 years old and you've learned nothing except how to survive. That's not strength. That's emptiness." For the first time since entering the holosuite, Alucard wasn't smiling. "You want me to yield?" Worf asked. "Then kill me. Prove that survival is all that matters. Prove that 5 centuries of existence has taught you something more than how to be cruel." The silence stretched. Alucard stared at the Klingon, at this warrior who'd been beaten, impaled, thrown through walls, and still stood defiant. At this man who genuinely believed that dying with honor was better than living without it. "Well, shit," Alucard said quietly. "You actually believe that, don't you?" "Every word. You're either the bravest person I've met in a century, or the stupidest. Possibly both." Alucard turned away. "Computer, end program." The Klingon arena dissolved, replaced by the holosuite's yellow grid. Worf remained standing, bleeding but unbroken. "That's it?" he demanded. "You're running?" "I'm bored, and you made your point." Alucard headed for the exit. "You win, Worf. Not because you're stronger, you're not. Not because you're better, jury's still out, but because you reminded me of someone." "Who?" "A human I knew. Long time ago. She also thought dying for something mattered more than living for nothing. She also looked at me like I was a monster worth redeeming." Alucard paused at the door. "She was wrong, by the way. I'm not redeemable, but she believed it anyway." He looked back over his shoulder. "You're right. I am alone. Been alone for a very long time. And you know what? It sucks. But at least I'm honest about it. Your precious honor is just a different kind of loneliness wearing a uniform. Then, perhaps, Worf said carefully, we are not so different. Alucard laughed, not his usual mocking laugh, but something that almost sounded genuine. Yeah, maybe we're not. Still think you're a cosplaying furry, though. And I still think you're a monster. Difference is, I'm right. The door hissed open. In the corridor beyond, a crowd had gathered. Crew members who'd been watching the security feeds. They parted silently as Alucard walked through, his coat still smoking from Worf's blood. Dr. Bashir rushed into the holosuite. Commander, you need medical attention? I'm fine, Worf said, though he was clearly not fine. He watched Alucard disappear around a corner. Inform the captain. I've completed my assessment. Assessment? Alucard is dangerous, unstable, probably insane. Worf allowed himself a small smile. But he can be reasoned with, and deep down, beneath the cruelty and the mockery, he's still capable of mercy. How can you tell? Because he didn't kill me when he easily could have. Because he ended the fight the moment it stopped being about victory and started being about something else. Worf accepted Bashir's support, limping toward the medical bay. He's a warrior without a war, Doctor. Without purpose or direction, extremely dangerous. But perhaps redeemable. In the security office, Odo reviewed the holosuite footage with Captain Sisko. He held back, Odo said. The entire fight, he could have killed Worf instantly. But he didn't. Because he's not a mindless killer, Sisko replied. He chooses his violence, which makes him more dangerous, not less. Or more controllable. We can't control him, Odo. We can only hope to point him in the right direction. Sisko stood, but Worf got through to him, made him think. That's more than anyone else has managed. Do you think he'll help us? Really help us? Sisko looked at the frozen image of Alucard walking away from the fight, his coat covered in blood, both Worf's and his own. I think he'll do what serves his interests, and right now, his interests align with ours. He paused. The question is what happens when they don't. That question would be answered sooner than anyone expected. The Borg cube appeared at the edge of the Bajoran system without warning. One moment, sensors showed empty space. The next, a massive geometric nightmare of technology and assimilated flesh dropped out of transwarp, its shields already adapting to Federation weapons profiles. It was smaller than the typical Borg vessel, a scout cube designated as such by Starfleet tactical databases. But smaller was relative when discussing a ship that could assimilate entire civilizations. Red alert klaxons screamed across Deep Space Nine. Borg cube, bearing 035 Mark 7, Dax reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. Distance, 4 million kilometers and closing. They're hailing us. On screen, Sisko ordered. The view screen filled with the interior of the Borg cube. A labyrinth of alcoves, conduits, and drones moving with mechanical precision. A single drone stepped forward, its remaining biological eye staring with empty hunger. We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. Shields up, Sisko commanded. Charge weapons. Prepare for... Wait. Alucard's voice crackled over the comm. He'd patched himself directly into ops communications from Quark's bar. Did that walking corpse just say, resistance is futile? Because that's the most arrogant thing I've heard since the last founder claimed divinity. Alucard, get off this channel, Kira snapped. No, No, I'm genuinely curious. What are these things? They look like someone crossed a zombie with a computer and gave it a really aggressive sales pitch. Sisko made a quick decision. The Borg are a collective consciousness. They assimilate species, biological and technological, into their hive mind. They're one of the most dangerous threats in the galaxy. Assimilate? You mean they try to take over your mind and make you part of their, group project? Essentially, yes. There was a pause. Then Alucard started laughing so hard, the comm signal distorted. Oh, this is perfect. Captain, with your permission, I'd like to introduce myself to our new friends. Absolutely not. We need to evacuate the station and prepare for... They said resistance is futile, right? Let me show them what futile actually looks like. Before Sisko could respond, Alucard's signal cut out. On the view screen, the Borg drone tilted its head in that characteristic way that meant the collective was processing new information. A biological anomaly has been detected aboard your station. Designation: unknown. Origin: extra-dimensional. Threat assessment: significant. This entity will be assimilated first. Its distinctiveness is desirable. You're not assimilating anyone, Sisko said, buying time while the Defiant powered up. This station is under Federation protection. We will defend. The Borg cube fired. A cutting beam lanced through space, slamming into the station's shields. They held, barely. Energy readings spiked across all power conduits. Shields at 60%, O'Brien reported. They're adapting to our frequencies. Next hit will punch through. Return fire, all weapons. DS-9's phaser arrays opened up, joined by photon torpedoes from the Defiant as it cleared the docking bay. Orange and blue energy hammered the cube's shields, which flickered but held. The Borg had adapted to Federation weapons too many times. They knew every frequency, every modulation, every tactical pattern. The cube fired again. This time the beam carved through the shields like they were paper, slicing into the station's outer hull. Atmosphere vented from 3 decks. Damage reports flooded in. They're preparing to transport, Dax warned. Hundreds of signatures materializing throughout the station. The transporter signatures appeared. Borg drones materialized in the promenade, in ops, in engineering. Their mechanical voices echoed through every corridor. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. And then, in the middle of the promenade, one drone stopped mid-step. It tilted its head. Sensors detected something. An anomaly. A target. Alucard stepped out of Garrick's tailor shop wearing his newly repaired coat, looking annoyed that his shopping had been interrupted. Really? He said to the dozen Borg drones converging on his position. You couldn't wait until after I picked up my dry cleaning? The nearest drone extended its assimilation tubules, nano-injection tubes designed to inject nanoprobes directly into a victim's bloodstream. You will be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness. Alucard grabbed the drone by its mechanical arm and ripped it clean off. Let me stop you right there. I've heard the sales pitch. Not interested. He examined the severed limb with academic curiosity. Nanoprobes, right? Tiny robots that rewrite your DNA and consciousness. That's actually pretty clever. Limited, but clever. 10. Assimilation tubules stabbed into his neck simultaneously. The Borg drones pumped millions of nanoprobes into his bloodstream. The microscopic machines immediately began their work, attempting to interface with his cellular structure, to override his biological functions, to connect him to the collective. For exactly 3 seconds, it seemed to work. Alucard's eyes glazed over. His body went rigid. The Borg registered successful assimilation of biological entity designation. Alucard. Then his eyes refocused, and they were burning. "Oh, you stupid, stupid machines," he said, his voice layered with something that sounded like multiple people speaking at once. "You just injected yourselves into me." The nanoprobes in his bloodstream began to scream. It wasn't a sound anyone could hear, but every Borg drone on the station staggered. The collective's perfect unity fractured. Because the nanoprobes weren't assimilating Alucard. Alucard was assimilating them. Inside his bloodstream, 3 million absorbed souls stirred. The nanoprobes found themselves in a body that was host to an army of the dead. Each soul, each consciousness Alucard had consumed over 5 centuries, treated the invading machines like prey. The nanoprobes tried to adapt, tried to overwhelm through sheer numbers, tried to call for reinforcements from the collective. They failed. Alucard's cellular structure began breaking down the nanoprobes, absorbing their programming, learning their protocols. And through those protocols, he touched the collective itself. On the Borg cube, every drone stopped simultaneously. The collective experienced something it had never encountered in its millennia of existence. Invasion. Not physical invasion, consciousness invasion. Something alien and ancient and impossibly wrong was forcing its way through the neural link, using the assimilated nanoprobes as a bridge. Alucard's consciousness crashed into the collective like a tidal wave of blood and darkness and laughter. "Hello, boys and girls," his voice echoed through 10,000 linked minds. "Let me tell you about the time I ate an entire Nazi vampire army. It's a great story, very relevant to your current situation." The collective tried to sever the connection, tried to purge the corrupted nodes, tried to adapt. Alucard adapted faster. On the promenade, the Borg drones began to shake. Their mechanical components sparked. Their biological parts started bleeding from every orifice as Alucard's presence burned through their neural pathways like acid. "You made a mistake," Alucard said, still standing calmly while tubules pumped uselessly against his skin. "You tried to add me to your collective, but I already am a collective. 3,424,867 souls. Every single one of them a mind, a personality, a life I consumed." He grabbed the nearest drone's head and twisted. The metal and bone crumpled like paper. And now they're all very, very hungry. He released level 0. The promenade exploded with darkness. Shadows poured from Alucard's body like ink in water, spreading across every surface, consuming light itself. And from those shadows came things. Humanoid shapes, thousands of them, tens of thousands. The absorbed souls of everyone Alucard had ever killed, manifesting as semi-corporeal familiars. They fell upon the Borg drones like a swarm. In Ops, Sisko and his crew watched the security feeds in horror as the promenade became a slaughterhouse. Borg drones, beings that had assimilated entire species, that had fought gods and won, were torn apart by an army of ghosts wearing faces from across 5 centuries. "What the hell is that?" O'Brien whispered. "That," Garrick said from his position at a secondary console. He'd evacuated his shop when the fighting started. "Is what happens when you try to assimilate a vampire who's been killing things since before your great-great-grandparents were born." On the cube, the collective made a decision: retreat. But Alucard wasn't done. His consciousness followed the neural link back to the cube itself, riding the connection like a data stream, his presence burning through the collective's firewalls and adaptive protocols. He found the Borg Queen's consciousness at the center of the network, the unifying intelligence that coordinated the entire collective. "Hello, Your Majesty," he said directly into her mind. "Fancy meeting you here." The Queen's voice was cold, mechanical, perfect. "You are an impossibility. No individual consciousness should be able to resist assimilation. Oh, I'm not resisting. I'm winning. There's a difference. The Borg adapt. We will overcome you. Will you? Because from where I'm standing, metaphorically speaking, since I'm currently eating your drones and using your neural network like a phone line, it looks like you've made a catastrophic miscalculation. 3 million souls scream through the collective simultaneously. Drones across. The cube began self-destructing. Alcoves sparked and exploded. The cube's perfect geometry started to crack as its internal systems failed under the assault of a consciousness that refused to be contained. The Queen did something unprecedented. She felt fear. Disconnecting from compromised nodes, she announced to the collective. Severing link to Bajoran sector, retreat, retreat, retreat. The cube's transwarp engines flared to life. It turned, abandoning the assault on Deep Space Nine, fleeing at speeds that bent space-time itself. Behind it, Alucard stood on the promenade surrounded by the corpses of 47 Borg drones and the fading shadows of his familiar army. He was covered in mechanical lubricant and assimilated blood. His coat was torn. His glasses were cracked. He was smiling. Well, he said to the security team that had finally arrived, weapons drawn and useless. That was refreshing. Haven't had a good workout like that in decades. Odo stared at him. You fought off Borg assimilation. You invaded the collective. You made them retreat. I made them run like children who just realized the monster under the bed is real. Alucard pulled a Borg ocular implant from his coat pocket and examined it. Neat technology, though. Nanoprobes, adaptive shielding, distributed consciousness. If they weren't so goddamn arrogant, they might actually be dangerous. Sir, one of the security officers said to Odo, voice shaking. What do we do with him? We thank him. Sisko's voice came over the comm, and we remember exactly what he's capable of. Alucard looked up at the nearest security camera and waved. In ops, the senior staff watched in silence as he strolled back toward Quark's bar, stepping over Borg corpses like they were sidewalk debris. He just repelled a Borg assault single-handedly, Bashir said, his voice numb with shock. He didn't repel it, Dax corrected, reviewing the sensor logs. He terrified it. The Borg collective fled from a single individual. That's never happened before. Not with species 8472, not with Q, never. What does that make him? Kira asked. No one had an answer. In the darkest reaches of the Delta Quadrant, the Borg Queen retreated into her alcove, severing all but essential links to the collective. The compromised drones had been purged, destroyed to prevent contamination. The cube was lost. The mission was a failure. But more importantly, data had been gathered. The entity called Alucard was unlike anything in the Borg's vast databases. A consciousness that existed as both singular and multitude. A biological form that defied death. A predator that consumed other predators. The Borg would analyze, adapt, return, but not soon. Not until they were absolutely certain they could win. The Dominion's final assault on Deep Space Nine came 3 weeks later. It wasn't subtle. The Founders had no interest in stealth or deception this time. They wanted to send a message. We are inevitable. We are order. Resistance ends here. 200 Jem'Hadar attack ships dropped out of warp simultaneously, forming a battle formation that stretched across the Bajoran system like a net of death. Behind them came cruisers, battleships, and the flagship, a massive Dominion dreadnought that dwarfed everything else in the sector. On the bridge of that dreadnought, a Founder stood in its liquid state, rippling with calculated fury. Begin the assault, it commanded. The fleet opened fire. Deep Space Nine's shields lit up like a star going supernova as Polaron beams and plasma torpedoes hammered against them from every direction. The Defiant and its small fleet of support vessels, 3 Miranda-class ships and 2 Klingon birds of prey, launched from the station, returning fire with everything they had. It wasn't enough. Shields at 40% and falling, O'Brien reported from engineering, his voice tight with stress. We can't sustain this level of bombardment. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they punch through. In ops, Sisko stood at the center of organized chaos. Damage reports flooded in. Casualty figures climbed. The station shuddered under each impact, groaning like a living thing in pain. "Where's our reinforcements?" Kira demanded. "Starfleet Task Force 7 is still 3 hours out," Dax reported. "The Klingon fleet is engaging Dominion forces near the Cardassian border. We're on our own. Then we hold the line until help arrives." Sisko's voice was iron. "All hands to battle stations. Evacuate non-essential personnel to the lower decks. Prepare emergency evacuation procedures for the civilians." "Captain?" Odo said quietly from his security console. "Alucard is on the promenade. He's watching." Sisko glanced at the security feed. Alucard stood at one of the viewports, hands in his pockets, watching the battle with the detached interest of someone observing a theatrical performance. Around him, panicked civilians ran for shelter while station personnel rushed to defensive positions. He looked bored. "Open a channel," Sisko ordered. "Channel open, sir." "Alucard, we could use your help." On the security feed, Alucard tilted his head slightly. When he spoke, his voice came through crystal clear despite the chaos around him. "Could you now? And what exactly would you like me to do, Captain? Go outside and punch 200 spaceships? I'm good, but I'm not that good. You fought off the Borg. You destroyed 6 Jem'Hadar ships the day you arrived. You're the most powerful individual asset we have." Asset, I like that word. Very honest, you're a weapon we're pointing at our enemies. Alucard pulled out one of his pistols and examined it casually. "What's in it for me?" "The survival of everyone on this station, including you. I'm functionally immortal, remember? I'll survive. The question is whether I care if anyone else does." The station shook. Shields dropped to 30%. A plasma torpedo slipped through a gap in the defensive fire and impacted the station's lower pylon, tearing through 3 decks. 17 people died instantly. "Damn you," Sisko said quietly. "People are dying. People are always dying, Captain. It's what they do best." But something in Alucard's voice had changed. "Though I'll admit, I've grown somewhat attached to this place. Quark makes a decent drink. Garrick tells good stories. And Worf?" He smiled. "Worf reminds me that honor isn't completely dead, even if it's stupid." "Then help us. On one condition." Alucard turned to face the camera directly. "After this is done, assuming we win, you owe me a favor. No questions asked, no moral objections. One favor to be called in whenever I want." Kira shook her head violently. "Sir, we can't agree to that. We have no idea what he'll ask for. We also have no idea if we'll survive the next 5 minutes without him," Sisko replied. He met Alucard's gaze through the security feed. "Agreed. One favor. You have my word." Alucard's grin widened. "Oh, Captain. You're going to regret that. But not today." He vanished from the viewport. In ops, alarms blared as sensors detected something impossible. A humanoid signature, Alucard's signature, had just appeared in open space, 300 kilometers from the station, directly in the path of the advancing Dominion fleet. "How is he out there without a suit?" O'Brien demanded. "He doesn't need one," Bashir said, pulling up medical readings. "He doesn't breathe. His cellular structure is completely self-contained. Vacuum is just empty space to him. On the view screen, magnified by the station's sensors, they watched as Alucard floated in the void. He spread his arms wide, his red coat billowing in solar wind that shouldn't have affected it. And then he grew. Not physically. His body remained the same size, but his presence expanded. Shadows poured from him like blood from a wound, spreading across space itself, blotting out stars. The darkness took shape, forming wings that stretched kilometers in every direction. Eyes opened in the void, thousands of them, millions of them, each one glowing crimson. "What the hell is that?" Kira whispered. "That," Garrick said from his position at Ops, "is what he really is when he stops pretending to be human." Alucard's voice echoed across every comm frequency. Federation, Klingon, Dominion. Everyone heard it. Everyone felt it in their bones. "I am the bird of Hermes, eating my own wings to keep myself tame. I am the Count. I am the vampire Alucard, and I am very, very bored of your little war." The Dominion fleet halted. On the Dreadnought, the Founder processed what it was seeing. Its sensors registered the entity as both matter and energy, both living and dead, both singular and multitude. Threat assessment algorithms crashed trying to categorize it. "What is that?" Avorta asked nervously. "An obstacle," the Founder replied. "All ships concentrate fire. Destroy it." 200 ships opened fire simultaneously. The void lit up with enough energy to sterilize a planet. Polaron beams, plasma torpedoes, photonic charges, everything the Dominion had poured toward the single point where Alucard floated. The darkness ate it. Every weapon, every beam, every explosive simply vanished into the shadows like stones dropped into an infinite well. The energy didn't disperse or reflect. It just disappeared, consumed. "My turn," Alucard said. He released level 0. The darkness exploded outward. 3,424,867 souls erupted into space. Each one a semi-corporeal familiar, each one hungry for violence. They looked like people. Men, women, children from across 5 centuries, wearing the clothes they'd died in, carrying the weapons they'd been killed with. They fell upon the Dominion fleet like locusts. Jem'Hadar soldiers on the attack ships found themselves fighting ghosts that phased through bulkheads, that regenerated from weapons fire, that killed with hands that weren't quite physical. The familiars tore through hulls, ripped apart soldiers, and sabotaged systems with gleeful abandon. On the Defiant, Worf watched his tactical display light up with chaos. The Dominion fleet is breaking formation. Internal sensors on multiple ships are detecting, I don't know what to call it, boarding actions by non-corporeal entities? "He's haunting them," Sisko said, understanding dawning. "He's literally haunting an entire fleet." Ship after ship began to fall, not from external damage, from internal collapse. Crews went mad as ghosts from 5 centuries of Alucard's victims whispered in their ears, showed them horrors, drove them to turn weapons on each other. Jem'Hadar soldiers, genetically bred to feel no fear, experienced terror for the first time in their short lives. The fleet tried to retreat. Alucard wouldn't let them. His consciousness expanded through space, using his familiars as anchors, creating a net of shadow that trapped the ships like insects in amber. When they tried to warp away, they found their engines sabotaged by hands that shouldn't exist. When they tried to fight, they found enemies that couldn't be killed. "You wanted to impose order on chaos." Alucard's voice echoed through every ship. "Let me show you what chaos really looks like." The darkness condensed. All 3 million familiars merged back into Alucard's form, and for just a moment, he became something beyond vampire, beyond undead, beyond mortal comprehension. He became concentrated death, given form and purpose. He became the thing that even monsters feared. The jackal and Kasol appeared in his hands, but they were different now. Larger, burning with crimson energy. When he fired, the bullets weren't just physical ammunition. They were condensed fragments of absorbed souls, each one carrying the weight of a life consumed. The first shot punched through a Jem'Hadar cruiser's shields like they were air. The ship exploded from the inside out, its antimatter containment failing catastrophically. The second shot hit a battleship's bridge, and everyone inside experienced every death Alucard had ever witnessed in a single instant. They died from the psychic trauma before the ship's core breach killed them physically. He kept firing. Ship after ship died, not from superior firepower, from being on the receiving end of 5 centuries of accumulated death. On the Dreadnought, the Founder finally understood what it was facing. This wasn't a soldier or a weapon or even a species. This was a fundamental force of nature wearing the shape of a man. This was death itself, bored and looking for entertainment. "Retreat," it ordered. "All ships retreat immediately." "We outnumber it 200 to 1, the Vorta protested. "And it doesn't care." The Founder's voice held something that sounded almost like fear. "We cannot fight this. We cannot adapt to this. We can only flee." The Dominion fleet broke. Ships that had survived turned and ran, their warp engines screaming to maximum as they fled the Bajoran system. Behind them, Alucard hung in space, surrounded by the debris of 37 destroyed vessels, watching them go. "That's what I thought," he said. Then he turned toward Deep Space Nine and smiled. The station's sensors picked up his approach, not flying, not warping, just moving through space as if vacuum were just another room to walk through. He materialized on the promenade in a shimmer of shadow, looking exactly as he had when he left. Not a scratch on him, not a tear in his coat. Like he'd just taken a casual stroll instead of single-handedly routing the largest Dominion assault force the Alpha Quadrant had ever seen. Quark was standing at his bar, staring. The few civilians who hadn't evacuated stared. Odo, who'd come down from ops, stared. "What?" Alucard said. "Is there something on my face?" "You just..." Quark couldn't finish the sentence. "Saved your station?" Yes, I did." Alucard walked to the bar and sat down. "I'll take that drink now. The expensive stuff. I think I earned it." In ops, Sisko watched the Dominion fleet disappear from sensors. Around him, his crew stood in stunned silence. "Casualty report," he said quietly. 43 dead, Kira reported. 217 injured. Structural damage to pylons 2 and 5. "But sir, we're still here. The station's still here." "Because of him," Dax added. Sisko nodded slowly. He'd made a deal. One favor, no questions asked. He'd given Alucard, a being of almost incomprehensible power and questionable morality, a blank check. But they were alive. "Stand down from red alert," he ordered. "Begin damage control and casualty recovery. And someone tell Alucard." He paused. "Tell him his drinks are on the house. Forever." In the Gamma Quadrant, in the depths of the Founder's homeworld, the changelings gathered in their great link for the first time in months. They merged, sharing information, experiencing each other's memories of the assault on Deep Space Nine. They felt the Founder's fear, saw through its eyes as Alucard became something beyond their understanding. Experienced the death of 37 ships and thousands of Jem'Hadar. When they separated, their decision was unanimous. "We cannot defeat this entity," the eldest Founder declared. Then what do we do? Another asked. We adapt our strategy. We do not fight it directly. We work around it. We wait for it to become bored or distracted. We plan for decades if necessary. The eldest founder's form rippled with frustration. But we do not, under any circumstances, face that thing in direct combat again. And if it comes for us? The eldest founder had no answer to that. 3 months after the battle, Deep Space Nine had settled into an uneasy new normal. The Dominion still controlled vast territories in the Alpha Quadrant, but their advance had stalled. Not because the Federation had suddenly gained superior firepower or brilliant new tactics, but because every Dominion commander now had to consider one variable that couldn't be calculated, predicted, or planned around. What if Alucard shows up? The vampire had become the Federation's ultimate strategic asset without ever officially joining Starfleet. He came and went as he pleased, appeared at battles without being called, and disappeared for days at a time without explanation. Starfleet intelligence tried to track him. Section 31 tried to recruit him again. The Klingons wanted to award him a commendation. He told them all to fuck off and went back to drinking at Quark's. But his presence changed everything. Dominion fleets approaching Federation space had to factor in the possibility that their entire armada could be destroyed by a single individual who treated physics like a suggestion. Vorta negotiators found their threats hollow when everyone knew the Federation had something that had made the Borg collective run away. The war wasn't over, but the certainty of Dominion victory had evaporated like morning mist. Sisko stood in his office, looking out at the wormhole. The prophets hadn't spoken to him since Alucard's arrival, not directly anyway. But he felt their satisfaction radiating through the celestial temple. They'd gambled on chaos, and chaos had delivered. The door chimed. "Come in." Alucard entered, looking unusually serious. He'd cleaned up since the battle. New coat, repaired glasses, even washed the perpetual bloodstains from his clothes. He looked almost respectable. Almost. "Captain," he said, sketching a mocking salute. "Got a minute?" "For you, always." Sisko gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you?" "Nothing. I just came to tell you I'm leaving." Sisko felt something cold settle in his stomach. Leaving the station? Leaving this reality, if I'm lucky. Alucard sat down, sprawling in the chair like a bored teenager. "I've been talking to your science officer, Dax. Smart woman. She's been studying the wormhole, trying to understand how the prophets pulled me through. Turns out, with the right equipment and a lot of energy, she thinks she can reverse the process. Send you home. Maybe, possibly. It's a long shot wrapped in theoretical physics and tied with a bow of, we'll probably accidentally create a black hole." Alucard smiled without humor. "But it's the best chance I've got." Sisko was quiet for a moment. "When?" "Few days. Week at most. Dax needs to run more simulations, and we need the wormhole to be stable. But soon." Alucard looked out the window at the stars. "I've enjoyed my time here. Really. Your universe is weird and your wars are stupid. But you've got spirit. And some of you, not many, but some, remind me why I used to give a shit about humanity. Will you miss it? This place? Miss it?" Alucard considered the question seriously. "I'll miss Quark's overpriced drinks. I'll miss watching Odo try to arrest people who don't respect his authority. I'll miss Garrick's stories about the Obsidian Order. I'll even miss Worf, the cosplaying furry." He paused. "But I won't miss being stranded in a universe that's not mine. I've got people back home, a job, a woman who gives me orders and somehow makes me want to follow them." "Integra," Sisko said. He'd read the file Alucard had provided, More a collection of rambling stories than actual intelligence, but it painted a picture. Your master. The only person whose authority I recognize. And yeah, I want to get back to her. Want to see if she survived whatever Nazi vampire nonsense was happening when I got yanked through dimensions. Want to... He trailed off, looking almost vulnerable for a moment. Want to go home? I understand. Sisko stood, moving around his desk. Before you go, I need to know. Will you help us until then? The Dominion hasn't given up. They're regrouping, adapting. They'll attack again. Will I keep fighting your war? Alucard laughed. Captain, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been fighting your war because I was bored and it was entertaining. The Borg thing was fun. The Dominion fleet was a good workout. But I'm not a soldier in your army. I never was. I know. But Alucard stood as well. I made a deal with your prophets. They said they'd help me get home if I helped preserve linear existence, whatever the hell that means. So, yeah, until Dax gets her dimensional portal working, I'll keep making the Dominion piss themselves whenever they think about attacking. Consider it payment for services rendered. And the favor I owe you? Alucard's expression turned predatory. Oh, I haven't forgotten about that. I'm cashing it in right now. Sisko tensed. What do you want? Nothing dramatic, nothing evil. Just... Alucard pulled something from his coat. A small data chip. I want you to keep this. It's got information. Everything I pulled from that Vorta's mind, everything I learned fighting the Borg, everything I've observed about your universe's physics and power systems. Consider it a gift. That's it? That's your favor? Well, that and one other thing. Alucard's smile softened slightly. I want you to promise me something. When this war is over, and it will be over eventually, one way or another, don't let this place become like what I left behind. Don't let fear and desperation turn you into the monsters you're fighting. Sisko took the data chip slowly. That's not a favor. That's advice. Then take the advice and call the favor paid. I don't need you to owe me anything, Captain. You're a good man trying to do an impossible job in impossible circumstances. That's rare. Depressingly rare. Alucard turned toward the door. Besides, I figure the psychological torment of wondering what horrible thing I was going to ask for was payment enough. You're an asshole. I'm a 500-year-old vampire. It's in the job description. He paused at the door. One more thing. Tell Worf I was wrong. Honor isn't just cosplay. It's the thing that keeps people like you from becoming people like me. He should hold on to that. You could tell him yourself. Nah, more dramatic this way. Alucard left, and Sisko stood alone in his office, holding a data chip that might contain insights worth more than a fleet of starships. The farewell gathering at Quark's was small and unofficial. Word had spread that Alucard was leaving, and those who'd grown to tolerate, if not like, the vampire showed up to see him off. Quark poured drinks. Garrick told one last story about a particularly gruesome Obsidian Order operation, which made Alucard laugh genuinely. Bashir tried to get final medical scans and was politely told to fuck off. Dax went over the theoretical framework for the dimensional transfer one more time, using napkins as visual aids. Odo stood in the corner, arms crossed, looking like he wasn't sure whether to be relieved or disappointed. You know, the changeling said finally, when you first arrived, I thought you were going to destroy this station within a week. I still could, Alucard replied cheerfully, but I won't. You're welcome. You saved us, multiple times, despite being a psychotic killer who respects no authority. Are you trying to thank me, Constable? Because you're doing a terrible job. Odo's expression softened slightly. Thank you. For fighting when you didn't have to. For staying when you could have just done whatever monsters do. Terrorize villages and seduce virgins mostly. Very traditional. Alucard raised his glass. But you're welcome. You're a good cop, Odo. Even if you are a shapeshifter working for solids who will never fully trust you. How did you? I pay attention. It's what predators do. Alucard drained his drink. Don't let it make you bitter. The outsider's perspective is valuable, even if it's lonely. Worf approached, looking uncomfortable but determined. I wanted to say that I was right about honor being performance art. No, that you were wrong. Worf's voice was firm. Honor isn't about being perfect. It's about trying to be better than what you were yesterday. It's about choosing to do what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs everything. And you think I don't understand that? I think you understand it better than you pretend. Worf extended his hand. You fought for us, saved us. That was honorable, whether you admit it or not. Alucard stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then he shook it, his grip firm. Don't tell anyone, he said quietly. I've got a reputation to maintain. Kira was last. She'd been standing at the bar, nursing a spring wine, watching the interactions with the wariness of someone who'd lived through occupation and knew that monsters didn't always have fangs. Major, Alucard said, come to make sure I actually leave? Come to ask you something. She set down her glass. The prophets brought you here. They claimed they needed chaos to fight order. But I've watched you these past months. You're not chaos. You're selective, deliberate. You choose who to save and who to let die. Your point? My point is that you could have killed everyone on this station a dozen times over. You could have turned the war into a bloodbath. But you didn't. Why? Alucard was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable behind his orange glasses. Because I've seen what happens when monsters run unchecked, he said finally. I've been that monster. I've killed without purpose, without restraint, without anything resembling morality. And you know what I learned? It's boring, empty. There's no satisfaction in slaughtering the helpless. So you only kill the strong? I only kill the deserving, or the stupid, or people who really piss me off. He smiled slightly. Your prophets were right about one thing. I am chaos. But I'm directed chaos. I choose my targets. I choose my battles. And I chose to help you because the alternative was letting fascist shapeshifters win, and I've had my fill of fascists. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to any of us. Don't get used to it. Honesty is exhausting. Kira smiled despite herself. Good luck, Alucard. I hope you find your way home. Thanks, Major. I hope you find peace. You've earned it. The dimensional transfer took place in a cargo bay that Dax had converted into a makeshift laboratory. Equipment from across the quadrant had been assembled. Bajoran orb technology, Federation particle generators, even some Cardassian phase discriminators that O'Brien had reluctantly admitted might be useful. At the center of it all stood Alucard, looking more serious than anyone had ever seen him. This is going to hurt, isn't it? He asked. Probably, Dax admitted. We're essentially tearing a hole between universes and throwing you through it. The theoretical energy requirements alone should be impossible. But you're already impossible, and the wormhole is already a stable connection between realities. We're just hijacking it, temporarily, and reversing the polarity of, I understood maybe 3 words of that. It'll work. Probably, maybe. 60-40 odds. I've faced worse odds. Alucard looked at the assembled crew. Sisko, Kira, Dax, O'Brien, Bashir, Odo, Worf, even Garrick and Quark watching from the doorway. Well, this has been fun. Weird, but fun. Will you remember us? Bashir asked. After you're back in your own universe? Hard to forget the place where I fought the Borg and made Starfleet's finest realize that their precious prime directive is just another set of chains. Alucard pulled out his pistols one last time, checking them over. Yeah, Doc, I'll remember. Ready when you are, Dax said, hands on the controls. Alucard took a deep breath he didn't need. Do it. The machinery activated. Reality screamed. The cargo bay filled with light, not the clean white light of Federation technology, but something older, wilder. The Bajoran wormhole opened inside the room, its edges bleeding colors that shouldn't exist. Through it, they could see nothing. Void. Infinity. The space between spaces. Alucard stepped toward it, his form beginning to dissolve at the edges where he touched the portal. Captain, he called over the roar of collapsing dimensions. One more thing. What? Sisko shouted back. Your universe sucks, your wars are stupid, and your rules are annoying. Alucard grinned, wild and fierce and utterly alive, despite being technically dead. But you people are fucking magnificent. Don't ever change. He jumped into the wormhole. The portal collapsed. The light died. The machinery powered down with groans and sparks. The cargo bay was empty except for the crew and the smell of ozone. Did it work? Kira asked quietly. Dax checked her sensors. The dimensional breach is sealed. The energy signature that was Alucard is gone, completely gone from our reality. So he made it home? Or he's scattered across infinite dimensions as disconnected particles of consciousness. Dax smiled slightly. But given that he survived everything else we've thrown at him, I'm betting on the former. Sisko stood in the empty cargo bay, feeling oddly bereft. The station would be quieter now, safer, more predictable, less interesting. Dismissed, he said quietly. All of you, get some rest. Tomorrow we go back to fighting a war. They filed out, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the fading energy signature of a vampire who'd saved them all. Alucard opened his eyes to smoke and fire and the sweet smell of burning Nazis. He was standing on the deck of an aircraft carrier, the HMS Eagle, if memory served, and around him, the last remnants of Millennium's vampire army were being systematically slaughtered by Hellsing operatives. Gunfire, screaming, the satisfying crunch of Walter's wires cutting through undead flesh. It was beautiful. Sir Integra, one of the soldiers shouted. It's him, it's Alucard. And there she was. Integra Fairfax Wingate's Hellsing, looking older, more tired, but still every inch the iron-willed commander he'd served for decades. She stared at him like he was a ghost. Alucard, she said slowly. Where the hell have you been? You vanished in the middle of battle 3 months ago. 3 months? Alucard laughed. Try 6 months, boss. I've been on a little interdimensional vacation, met some interesting people, fought some worthy opponents, saved a universe or two. You're insane. Probably. But I'm back. He pulled out the jackal and aimed at a charging vampire. And I've learned some new tricks. Want to see? Integra's expression was pure steel. Report to headquarters immediately after this is over. You and I are going to have a very long conversation about unauthorized dimensional travel. Looking forward to it, Master. He fired. The vampire exploded in a shower of blood and screaming souls, a technique he'd learned from watching his own familiars work in the depths of space. Alucard smiled. He was home, and everything was exactly as it should be. Chaotic violent and absolutely insane. But somewhere in the back of his mind, he remembered a space station, a captain who'd made hard choices, a Klingon who believed in honor, a universe that had tried and failed to contain him. And he hoped they were okay. In the end, the Dominion War would continue for another year. Federation and Klingon forces would push back, retaking lost territory system by system. The Cardassian resistance would rise up, betraying their Dominion overlords. The Founders would retreat to the Gamma Quadrant, their dreams of imposed order shattered. Historians would debate what turned the tide. Some would credit Starfleet's determination. Others would point to Klingon ferocity or Romulan cunning or the simple fact that the Federation's ideals proved stronger than the Dominion's fear. But Captain Benjamin Sisko knew the truth. The war turned when the prophets gambled on chaos, when they pulled a monster from another universe and set him loose on a galaxy that thought it understood power. When Alucard, vampire, killer, impossible being, showed the Dominion that there were things in the multiverse far more terrifying than their shape-shifting gods. The Founders never forgot. Deep in their great link, the memory of that creature remained. A warning, a trauma, a reminder that control was an illusion and order was a dream that could be shattered by a single individual who refused to play by the rules. And on Deep Space Nine, in quiet moments, the crew would sometimes look at the stars and wonder, what if he came back? What if something else like him existed out there? What if the multiverse was full of beings that made their wars and their struggles seem small and meaningless? But mostly, they remembered the vampire in the red coat who'd saved them all and asked for nothing but a drink and a good fight. The multiverse was infinite. Realities collided. Dimensions intersected. And somewhere out there, Alucard was laughing, fighting, and reminding the monsters of every universe that even predators could be prey. The war was over. The vampire was gone. But the legend remained. And in the darkest corners of the Gamma Quadrant, the Founders trembled at the memory of what chaos looked like when it had a name, and walked among them. Deep Space Nine endured. The wormhole pulsed with ancient light. And the prophets, in their timeless realm, smiled at the chaos they'd unleashed and the order it had preserved. The universe was safe. For now.